November 2nd was a fairly warm day. Temperatures were in the mid-50s. We had a straight south wind, pretty warm, so scent control was going to be a huge part of our arsenal that day. And we had a long walk into the tree. We were excited to get in the tree. It's a giant CRP farm with some wooded draws that run through it. A levee runs down the center of it. So it's really cool. You can see a lot of deer. You can see for a long way. See what would happen. It's Iowa, it's November. You just never know. So we were really excited about this farm. Nicolette killed her first bow deer on this farm. During early November, it seems like the movement's pretty sporadic. It can go from being hot and then not. And that all depends on a hot doe. I mean, they're unpatternable, in my opinion, at this point. They are literally have one thing on their mind and they're going like crazy to get after it. We didn't really expect to see any certain deer because their patterns are so sporadic. They're just behind that next available doe. But we were in after a particular deer we had quite a bit of history with up until that point. A deer we called the 180. Just a giant mainframe, typical 5x5 deer with a split 2. We were excited to get in the tree that night and see if he would show up. Access on this stand is pretty bulletproof, actually. We've got a big CRP field in front of us, and a lot of deer don't like to bed towards the edge of it. With the CRP being about 7 to 8 foot tall, we were able to access through that CRP and literally dump in right on the front side of the tree stand. So as the night progressed, we did some calling, some blind calling, and buck after buck kept coming through. And the crazy thing is the trail wide out from the CRP in front of the stand, and they were all taking that far east trail, which put them directly downwind of the tree. And if we weren't all phased out that night with the warm temperatures, constantly using the field foam, we would have been busted by that first deer and the whole night would have been over. So after some deer had filtered through and it had kind of quieted down for a few minutes, I looked up and seen a buck working a scrape. I couldn't really tell what he was, but he was upwind of the tree quite a ways, and I knew that this might be a perfect opportunity to do a little calling. If not to necessarily call him in at the time, because I couldn't tell what he was, but at least get that visual, be able to get the binos on him, get him to break cover, and see really what kind of deer I was looking at. He heard him, he acknowledged him, but it just wasn't what he was looking for. Knowing when to stop calling at a deer is really important, because if he's not interested, it's not worth educating that animal, because you never know. That may be your target deer next year, and he may slightly remember something like that when he gets in the same area. It's always good to read their body language and know when enough's enough. So my last resort, with the deer only being about 70 yards away, it was a little risky, but I grabbed the black racks, did a short rattling sequence, followed by a snort wheeze, and that was all it took. He was marching in towards us, and he was marching in fast. He was working an edge, a natural edge between the CRP and the line of timber we were sitting in, and he was coming right down the edge of the timber. He was on a beeline. So he gets within bow range with no shot as he's facing right towards us, and he gets on this trail that's gonna literally bring him right underneath of us. And at this point, in my mind, the hunt is over. I mean, he's on the trail right in front of us, done deal. He stands there, quartering to real hard, and works a scrape, rubbing a preorbital gland scent, just putting on a show for us. And then he decides to turn and head back the way he was going, again, thinking that everything was upwind of the tree from our directional calling.
we just did it. We just killed one. Man, hit the black racks together. Man. The extinguisher, and he came right in on his string, made a scrape right there. And I think he's down in that ditch. Should have seen the muscle definition in that deer in his shoulders. How fast can it happen? Just like that. Wow. There he is.
So this is a deer we figured to be about 5-6 years old, maybe slightly older. Colton and Kyle hunt right across the river, so they knew of the deer just a little bit and thought they had seen him before, so it was definitely a mature animal. He had a really cool rack. Everything was wavy, everything from his tines to his beams. He had really neat brows that almost kind of corkscrewed on one side. He had a really deep split in his G3 on his one side, so he was a super cool deer, mature, and definitely what we're looking for when we head to a tree in November. Here he is. So it was an awesome hunt. Nicolette filmed the whole thing. With it being early November like that, they are just starting to crack wide open. They're still pre-rutting, they're still looking for fights, they're still looking to show dominance. So calling was a huge part of this hunt. Being able to paint the picture of everything upwind of your tree can dial up huge success in your future. You've got to be able to read a deer's body language. You've got to know when to stop calling and when to keep calling. And knowing that these deer are in the dominant attitude like they are, looking to set the precedence for the rest of the season, being able to aggressively call to these animals can put them right in your lap. Another huge contributing factor to this hunt was obviously our scent control. Up until the point of shooting that deer, every deer that night we had either called in or seen had come directly beneath the tree. If we weren't using the field foam that night with the warm conditions, that hunt would have been over before it began. Those deer were right there underneath of us. Being able to control the dander, being able to control those scent molecules was huge, and definitely the reason why we killed that buck that night, not alerting him before he was ever there.
Well,